I do think this offseason is going to be really fascinating because at this point, every NFL team has more cap space than they know what to do with, for the most part, outside of like maybe 3 to 5 exceptions, and they can play games with that cap space. So really there's no excuse to like, oh, we can't fiscally afford this guy or that guy. But the problem is that because all these teams have this cap space, there's not going to be that many intriguing players in the open market. Now, this Super Bowl is a great example of you can add guys that will make a big difference, right? Both of these teams have done that, but it's not these big flashy signings. It's more the stuff on the margins and then guys who outkick expectations like Milton Williams for the Patriots.
Malik Willis doesn't do it for you?
I mean, he definitely does it for me, for sure. But, like, that's the level of player we're talking about, like a speculative starting quarterback.
So what's it mean for JSN? Because everybody's talking about Jaxon Smith-Njigba right now, and is he the best wide receiver in the NFL?
That's the thing. Like, these homegrown players like that where you draft, you develop, it's a home run pick by the team. There's no excuse to have this, like, oh, we're haggling over this million or that million. Like, that's a deal that just needs to get done because at this point, yeah, I do think he's established himself. Whether you want to say he's the best receiver in the NFL, he's clearly established himself as a tier 1 receiver, which to me is a small, select group of players that can exceed regardless of their surroundings and their ecosystems. But he's a guy that's in a really good ecosystem, has really good surroundings, and I think they should try to lock up for the long term.
You can talk about that tier 1, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, JSN. If whoever you want to, choose as the number 1 out of that group, I'm not going to be upset.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
That's lovely that we agree. I'm so glad that we feel that way. But if we just look at this game in the Super Bowl, is JSN the best player that will be on the field on Sunday?
I think probably, yeah. Other contenders would be on the Patriots side. I mean, Drake May, I think, has to be considered that, even though hasn't had a great playoff run. I think we all know what he's capable of. It's crazy to me, by the way, he's 23 years old, and, just watching him run in that AFC Championship game, like, man, that guy's 23, and he still at times looks like Bambi out there. Like, imagine what he's going to be when he fully grows into himself as a physical presence, and he's already this good. So I think he's a good contender there. I think Christian Gonzalez, Patriots cornerback, is another name to mention. And then on the Seattle side, too, I do think we've gotten into this weird phase where we just kind of talk about the Seahawks defense as this conglomerate, and Mike McDonald gets most of the credit. But, Leonard Williams, Devin Witherspoon, those are 2 names I'd throw out in terms of best player. But I think if I was actually to sit down and rank it, like, relative to his position, JSN's probably the top contender in this game.
The most surprising part of the NFC Championship game, to me, frankly, was that he had 100 yards receiving in the first half for the 3rd time this season against a team that knew better than anybody what was coming. Why is he getting so open?
Well, it's a great point because everybody in the stadium knows that ball's going to number 11. That's where he has an outrageous share of the team's air yards, targets, whatever. Everybody knows they want to get that ball to JSN, but I think Clint Kubiak, Fitzy, got to be pretty excited. Raiders next head coach. He's shown a great ability to, all regular season, JSN, who was one of the most slot-heavy players in the NFL in his first 2 years, he was almost exclusively an outside guy, 17.5% snaps in the slot. But then in the playoffs, you're seeing him line up in the slot. You're seeing him go into the backfield. And that just creates these mismatches because it's, like, wide receiver has changed so much since I started, charting the position for reception perception back in 2014. Back then, it's like your number 1 was almost always that outside X receiver. Now, if your number 1 is lining up at X at 80%, 90% of their snaps, you're either you're telling us one of 2 things. 1, you're committing coaching malpractice, or 2, you don't think that guy's very good. So because of that, like, it's much more difficult to bracket that player if they're moving around to all 3 receiver positions. And, it's when you're watching the game on the broadcast, you're not seeing a guy like Rashid Shaheed clear out space for JSN. So there's just so many dynamics that go into it beyond just the individual player's talent and being an elite separator, which JSN is as well.
I also don't think it's a coincidence necessarily that we're talking about Sam Darnold's career renaissance, career reclamation, starting in Minnesota last year when you have Justin Jefferson, one of the best receivers in the National Football League, and then now in Seattle. Now he's quarterbacking the Super Bowl with Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I always believe that when there's credit and when there's blame to give, like, it's a pie. It's not just one person. So when we give a credit pie to Sam Darnold's career renaissance, how much goes to the JSNs and the Justin Jeffersons that he's been surrounded with, and how much go to just Sam Darnold has blossomed into the quarterback that we see him now today?
We need like a full kind of let's get all this stuff out of here and like do little slices of the table here because this is a good illustration. But I think that Sam's got to
move my stuff.
Yeah, right. Just get that out of here. Sam's got to take a pretty big slice here because I think what's good about Darnold is that he is like you live by the sword, you die by the sword type quarterback. He's a reckless player. He will throw the ball down the field, which gets him in trouble every now and again. But it also is he's going to take throws that other quarterbacks are not willing to make. And when you're surrounding talent as some of those guys, he was no disrespect, playing with in New York, it's just totally different than, okay, you've got a guy in Justin Jefferson, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, and 2 coaching staffs, again, who weaponize that player to line up at all 3 receiver positions. It's just a much different assignment at that point, a much different comfort level, and I think that matters a lot for a quarterback.
You mentioned Justin Jefferson. Let's stick there for a second because obviously he's not mincing a lot of words, right, at this point about where they could have been. And we've heard a lot about J.J. McCarthy, and it has everybody thinking maybe there's a shot that he could ask for a trade. I don't know if that will happen, but in your mind as a fantasy football expert, as a wide receiver expert, is there a spot that you're like, God, I really wish Justin Jefferson could find his way out of Minnesota and end up in?
How realistic do you want me to be in this question?
I mean, give me one way out there and then give me one realistic.
Okay, well, the one way out there one, just again, I mentioned most teams have more cap space than they possibly know what to do with. One of those teams that doesn't really is Buffalo. Now, they can certainly move things around and do a lot to get some more cap space, but that would be a natural connection, not just because Justin Jefferson is awesome and they do not have a lot of great receivers there in Buffalo at this point, but he has familiarity with Joe Brady, who was the passing game coordinator at LSU for that. I don't have to tell you this, Caroline, for that historic season, and Justin Jefferson obviously was there for that. So there is a level of familiarity there between those two guys. That's a natural connection. But again, cap space wise, realistic wise, probably not there. In terms of one that is a little bit more feasible, there are a lot of interesting teams that have a ton of cap space, like the Chargers, I think, they've got a good set of receivers, but he would come in there and immediately give them like a gravity-changing number 1 option. San Francisco is another one of those teams as well. So, I mean, there's not many teams that you would sit down and be like, well, we really couldn't use Justin Jefferson, but those are 2 like realistic ones I think that come to the top of mind.
If we want to talk more about the 2019 LSU team, we can totally get into that. Just why not?
Yeah, how long does this show go for? We can just spend the rest of it.
Yeah,
3 hours on that.
Okay, cool. We'll add a couple of
yeah, that's a good. I don't have anything else going on today.
Yeah,
actually, now it's all day. Now it's an all day. It's like one of those call-in telethon things. Like we're just
24 hours.
24 hours of coach up.
Yahoo Sports Daily-a-thon here for the entire week of the Super Bowl. There are guys where it's just like, look, everybody has a price. I understand that. But there are guys that are like, I mean, you're going to have to blow me away. Mm-hmm. What would a realistic trade offer even be for Justin Jefferson to make it worthwhile for the Minnesota Vikings?
Oh, my God. I mean, think about, we just talked about like Buffalo making that trade potentially. I mean, they got Stephon Diggs, who is in the Super Bowl this year with a totally different team. They traded a first, a third, and I think maybe some other things to get Diggs. And at that point, I loved Diggs as a player. Then I was kind of the view that he could be an elite receiver. He just needed the right ecosystem around him. But like Justin Jefferson is already proven as that tier 1 guy. So I would imagine the price would start with 2 first-round picks, and then we're going from there.
All right, so let's look at one of the other wide receivers because you mentioned everybody's got money. Mm-hmm. George Pickens, a lot of conversation now about what the Cowboys should do. Should they franchise him? Should George Pickens get a long-term massive deal? Like, how do you view Pickens?
I mean, I think if I'm George Pickens, and I don't know that I always want to get like into the George Pickens headspace, but I would not be one to go anywhere. I'd be one to stick right in Dallas. I mean, there's always like the idea of, hey, CeeDee Lamb's here, am I really the number 1 or am I the 1B? Am I the 2? Who cares? The grass is not always greener on the other side. Like, do you really want to? And you just experienced this if you're George Pickens. You were the number 1 in Pittsburgh. How fun was that? Like, it's much better to be this 1A, 1B tandem in a place like Dallas. So if I'm the Cowboys, also, I'm not trying to do anything but keep George Pickens here. And because of the franchise tag, like, fan bases are going to start looking at available free agent receivers. I'm like, oh, I see George Pickens' name there. That's really exciting. He's not going to be available. He'll probably just get the franchise tag, and the Cowboys will get to have all the headlines and all the fun stuff. And then maybe by like August 28th, they sign him to a long-term deal, and we all wasted our time talking about it in the offseason.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying. The Cowboys are just going to tag George Pickens. That just feels like the writing is on the wall there. And then I'll get pushed back on that, and people will say, well, he's not going to play under the franchise tag.
I mean,
what choice does he have?
Yeah, I know. It's a unfortunate reality, but it's just it is what it is. Like for NFL players at this point, like that's the collective bargaining agreement. That's where we're at. And yeah, until that franchise tag goes away, which it will probably never go away, this is what's going to happen to the top free agents on the market. Again, we'll put out these lists in the offseason. People will be really excited about these names. And then you can just go ahead and chop like 12 names off because teams are not going to allow them to hit the market.
I mean, your point on the franchise tag is an important one because when I've talked to guys around the league, it's never going to go away because it only impacts 32 players.
That's a
you have
good point.
thousands of people in the NFL Players Association. They're not all going to make sacrifices so that George Pickens doesn't get franchised. Did Micah Parsons change any of this? So, like, did he empower the whole, hey, I'm just going to lay on the training table in my sweats until somebody gets me the hell out of here? Does that maybe change the way we view some of that? I'm not saying Pickens is going to go full Parsons, but we don't know.
We don't know. And again, another person's headspace I definitely don't want to be in is Jerry Jones because I would have imagined. Yeah,
True.
Yeah, the yacht that'd be
That'd
sick.
be nice.
But
Just to live in his yacht.
wait, we can't all like three of us together can't pinch together some money and get a yacht.
Can we be like the below deck, like the show that goes on a yacht, but we're the below deck for Jerry Jones? We just live on his yacht year round.
I actually
don't think I
I
wanna
think
do
that's a
that.
bad idea.
I don't. I'm okay with that.
Give me Bravo. I want this show. I want this show. They don't want this show. They do not get cast. I want this show.
No, thank
out on
you.
that.
I'm okay.
But again, to the point, potentially something like that could happen because it is Dallas. It is weird, but I doubt it happens 2 years in a row.
We're talking about George Pickens, talking about Justin Jefferson, which he's not going to get moved if we just want to live in the world of reality. It's fun to talk about on a sports show. Who are we not talking about enough?
That we're not talking at wide receiver specifically that might get moved this offseason. I do think Brian Thomas Jr. probably gets talked about. Like if I'm a team like Buffalo, that's like the first call I'm making this offseason because I think we see this happen with GMs all the time where you spend the entire last offseason, if you're Brandon Beane, literally going on the radio and being like, you guys are, I'm not going to use the word that he
used
said.
a word that sounds a lot like trucking.
Right. And this is a family show. Yahoo Sports, family company. So I'm not going to say that, but he went on the radio and he really let him know that he thought that wide receiver position was good enough. Clearly, we all had eyeballs. We saw all regular season. It was not good enough. I think sometimes you see GMs then overcorrect on that. So I think he's going to be making calls to a lot of teams, but that's the first one I would make because Brian Thomas, I think, is a good player still coming off of a down season. Probably just not an ideal fit with what they want to do in Jacksonville for whatever reason. I mean, and we could spend the next 3 hours on the show talking about that. But I think in this offense with Joe Brady, where you do have that X receiver running kind of a straight line route tree, he would fit well there. And he's still on a rookie contract, so he's affordable. I would make that call. I think he's somebody that could potentially get moved. I think A.J. Brown, it's stupid to say we're not talking about him because he makes sure we're always talking about him.
About him all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one. And then Brandon Ayuk in San Francisco. He literally was not talking to his own team. I think he's going to be an interesting candidate, but man, talk about another strange headspace. I don't know where he's at this point, and I don't know if I'd want to be the team. Like, as somebody that's, it's not my money, it's not my job on the line, I'd be like, yeah, I'd make that call and see what's going on. If I was somebody in the other position there, I don't know. That's a tough one.
Brian Thomas Jr. one is just interesting because of the way we saw him a year ago versus how he's seen now. All right, everybody can see you on Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, obviously. You've got a lot of Radio Row stuff going on. Is there anybody you're super stoked you get to talk to this week?
Other than us.
Well, yeah, this was number one. Everything else is kind of downhill from here. But
a lot.
yeah, I totally understand. Michael Pittman from the Colts is one I'm interested in. He's actually a player that probably would have fit with that last question about, like, as a guy we're not talking about enough. He, at this point, could be a trade candidate this offseason, given sort of his contract, what they're dealing with Alec Pierce, who is a guy that might be able to make it to the open market and then get a ton of money in free agency. I'm curious, number one, just where Pittman's at, and number two, just kind of get a sense of that whole Colts wide receiver room, because I think it's a fascinating group to talk about.